Okay, so obviously nothing we talk about right now is on this quiz, all right? So please do not start freaking out. This is going to take us a couple days to get through these. Don't panic, you'll get it figured out. Really, they aren't hard, they're just so big. So I'm going to start by copying down the chart. You don't need to do this because you've got it right there on your paper. And when we do this on a test, I will provide you with this chart. Now, I'm not going to fill it all out for you, but I'll have this much of it filled out for you. So you'll know what you need to put in there. All right, so here's our chart. And we're eventually going to be graphing. I'm going to set that up. Here we go. You are taking a test in which type A questions are worth 10 points. So I'm going to go ahead and put that right here, 10 points for the A's. And the value of type B points are 15. So all this table is used for is to help me organize the words that are in the problem. And again, I'm going to set up the table for you. You'll just have to read the problem and then plug stuff in. So the value of question A is 10 points, and the value of question B is 15 points. All right, it takes 3 minutes to do an A, and it takes 6 minutes to do a B, and the total time is 60 minutes. The total, here's the total column. So total time, 60 minutes. And you may not answer more than 16 questions. So the total number of questions that you can answer is 16. Assuming all of your answers correct, how many items of each type should you answer to get the best score? All right, so the question, how many items of each type, tells you what your variables are. The number of question A's we're going to call X, and the number of question B's we're going to call Y. Now, you can call them A and B. It doesn't have to be X and Y, but since I'm going to be graphing these, I think I'll use X and Y because that's my normal, graph setup. Now, I need to know right now, oh, by the way, this one's not going to have anything in it because I don't know what that is. The purpose of the table is to organize all of the numbers that they give you. Does anybody have a question about why a number is in a spot in the table? That makes sense to everybody? Okay, now, there are several lines drawn there. These are for what we call the constraints. And those are basically the inequalities that are going to come from this table. Here's what I mean. It says in the problem, you may not answer more than 16 questions. So that means that your total number of questions, your X's plus Y's, have to be less than or equal to 16. You can't answer more than 16. You can answer 15, but you can't answer 17. So the total number of questions that you answer has to be less than or equal to 16. Now, the number of minutes that we have is no more than 60. You have 60 minutes to take this test. So that means 3 minutes for every X, 6 minutes for every Y, has to add up to less than or equal to 60. No more than 60 minutes. You can't take 61 or 62, but you can use 58 or 55. Now, there are two more constraints that are almost always in these problems. They're not written down, but they're common sense. X and Y have to be positive because X stands for the number of questions you're going to do. You can't do -4 questions. So X and Y are going to be positive. Always. I can't think of a problem they're not, so I'm just going to say always. So those are your constraints. That's it. So if I have too many lines listed, don't panic. I took everything straight from the table, and then these are kind of the automatics right here. Now there's one more blank there. It says expression to maximize. I guess I'll write it right in here. So my expression to maximize. What am I trying to maximize in this problem? I want to maximize my score, don't I? And how do I calculate my score? If you were to take this test, how would we figure out what your score is? Well, every A, which is X, is worth 10 points. So that would be 10 X's. And every Y is worth 15 points. So if you answered one of each, for example, one of each, your score would be 10 plus 15, 25. And our objective in the problem is to maximize our score. We want to get the highest score that we can. All right. We are finally ready to begin the problem. Anybody have a question about one of these? Like I said, these are automatic, so kind of just get in the habit of writing those down every time. But these came straight from my table. 1x plus 1y is less than or equal to 16. Now, the sign there, you're going to have to read the problem to tell, but it said no more than 16. 3x plus 6y, no more than 60. Straight from the table. And then 10x plus 15y, that is my score. That is what I'm going to get on this test when I take it. All right. Now you can tell from the graph that I only have quadrant 1. I didn't set up a graph like this because we never use any of this area. We only use quadrant 1 because x and y are both positive. So that's why the graph is set up like that. And now we're going to graph these two equations. You don't have to worry about these two because that's the way we set up our graph. Positive x's, positive y's. So we're not graphing those two. I'm going to use my red pencil or my red marker, and I'm going to graph this equation. Now, what I would suggest that you do is graph using the intercepts. And by that, I mean cover up one of your letters. If you cover up x, then y is 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I'm going to put a dot right there at 0, 16. And then I'm going to cover up the y, and x is 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I realize you may have to extend your graph, folks. Suck it up. You got plenty of room, just extend your graph. Now, connect those dots with a nice straight line, and this is always really hard for me to make this straight. Connect with a nice straight line. So you only need to plot those 2 points, and we plotted them by intercepts. So cover up one letter, figure out the other one, cover up the other letter, figure out the other one, and then connect those 2 dots. Now, I have to shade. Less than 16 means I'm going to shade underneath. So that first inequality, I have shaded underneath my line. Is everyone still with me? Okay, now I'm going to take my green marker and I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to do it exactly the same way. I'm going to cover up one letter at a time. So if I cover up the X's, my Y will be 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to plot that point. And then if I cover up my Y's, my X will be 60. So I get to extend this out. But not 60, 20 I mean, I'm sorry, 20. And I don't know if that's even going to be visible to you, but I got this point clear out here at 20, and I'm going to connect those. I'm not going to end up using that point anyway, so it's okay. But it's clear out there, so I connected 0, 10, and 20, 0, and I'm going to shade less than again. Now, notice that when I shade everything under the green, there's an overlapping area. There is part of my graph, not the whole thing, but part of it that's red and green. So I am going to outline that part, the part that's red and green, with a big black line. So this is the part of my graph that I'm actually looking at, that shape right there. That black area bounded by, you should have 4 dots. Can you see all those dots on there? That area is called the feasible region, and the answer to the question is going to be one of these dots. So the answer to the question is either going to be 0, 10, 0, 0, because the origin's down here, 16, 0, or this dot right here, which I don't know what it is. So I'm going to have to figure out that dot. But let's let everybody catch up. Is everybody at this point with me now? Does anyone have a question so far? Notice, I'm not graphing this. This one doesn't get graphed. The only ones that get graphed are the ones here that have the inequalities. These get graphed. Before I can go any further, I don't know where I'm going to do this, but before I can go any further, I need to figure out that black point. This one right here that I don't know. These were easy because they're right on the axes. This one's not so easy. So here's what I'm going to do. That black point is the intersection. I'm going to go ahead and erase my table. You've got that written down, so it's good. That black point that I don't know is the intersection of the red line and the green line. Now I put equals in there because I'm looking at just the lines, not all the shading. So the red line and the green line come together at that point. So I'm going to do substitution or elimination to find out where these 2 points come together. Remember, That's what substitution and elimination do. They tell us where two lines intersect. So, what would you like to do with this problem?
Substitution probably would be easiest.
Okay, so maybe just move it, so x equals 16 minus y? Like that, is that kind of what you're talking about? So 3 times 16 minus y plus 6y equals 60. By the way, folks, you don't have to do substitution. You could eliminate if you wanted to. I would rather eliminate, but I'm being a good team player. 48 minus 3y, I don't even know if you can see that now. I'm clear over on the side of the board now. We're there. So 48 minus 3y, I don't think I need this anymore either. Uh, 48 minus 3y plus 6y equals 60. All right, I got y equals 4. What about you? Did you get that? And then plugging that back in would give me an x value of what? Tell me when you get that far. Anybody have an x value?
Is it 12?
It is 12. Thank you, Clara. I plugged it in here, but you could plug it in here or here. It doesn't really matter where you plug it in. And again, I'm going to say it doesn't matter if you use substitution, elimination, or Kramer's rule. You can do whatever you want. You just have to figure out where these two cross each other. And it happens to be at the point 12, 4. So that means that the answer to the question, and this is always the case, the answer to the question is going to be one of these big black points. And some problems have 3, some problems have 5, some problems have 8 of them. But whatever your big black points are, the corners of your feasible region, that's going to be an answer. Now, how do we figure out the answer? Well, remember, the whole point is to be getting a score on our test. And we know that x's are worth 10 and y's are worth 15. So look up here. This would say that you're doing no x's and 10 y's. Well, what would be our score if we did no x's and 10 y's? What would be our score on that test?
150.
150. So that one gives me a 150. Well, what if I did no x's or no y's?
Zero.
Yep, you get a 0. That actually is your minimum score, because in our problem, we're looking for the highest score, but sometimes we want the lowest value, and your corners will always give you both the high point and the low point. All right? We don't want that, though. We don't want a score of 0. All right, well, what if we did 16 x's and no y's? What would our score be?
160.
Yep. And then we're going to do 12 x's. I got to work this one out. So 12 x's would be 120. And 4 y's would be 60. So that would be a 180. So after all of that effort, all that stuff that we did, we now have our answer. and you're gonna write out a sentence. You should do 12 A's and 4 B's for a score of 180 points. So when you're all done with writing the equations, filling in the table, drawing the picture, all the stuff you're doing, you'll write a sentence to describe the answer to the question.
Do we write that where it says expression to maximize?
No, expression to maximize is 10x plus 15y. That's your expression to maximize. This is just a separate thing you write at the bottom or side or wherever you got room. All right, do I have any questions about that? Courtney, turn your picture on, please. Do I have anybody have an issue? Those are huge problems, guys. I know they are. Don't be frightened of them. We'll practice.
I'll be back. I use the restroom.
Okay. All right, here we go. Let's try the next one. Now, the next one, I took this out of a book, and I forgot to make the table on it. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I want you to do is make the table. Just draw the table. I promise when I give you one of these on a test, I will have it for you. You just need to copy it down this time. So somewhere on your paper there, and make the same kind of chart. Okay, we got acres, we've got seed, and we've got profit. And we've got potatoes, and we've got corn. All right, so go ahead and set that up. And then we're going to go ahead and see if we can fill in all of the information that we're going to need to fill in. So, we're going to need the constraints. And we're going to need the expression. Are we maximizing or minimizing? Maximizing. All right, we need our graph. All right, so here we go. We're gonna start filling this stuff in. Well, can you help me out with the table at all? Does anybody know any numbers that would go anywhere in the table?
70 acres.
So 70 total acres, right? That makes perfect sense to me. Good. All right, what else?
And then the potatoes is 20 acres.
Okay, now the potatoes isn't 20 acres. The seed, the potato seed is 20. Does that make sense to everybody? And the seed for corn is 60. And his total seed money is 3,000. So all of the seed parts go in that seed row. Where am I going to put the 150?
Under the profit.
for potatoes. And then the corn profit is 50. I have no idea what the total profit is. They didn't tell me. But the question is, how many acres should he plant in potatoes and how many acres should he plant in corn? Isn't that the real question here? You're the farmer. You want to make as much money as you can. You want to maximize your profit. So that's 150 X's and 50 Y's. You want to maximize your profit. So the expression that you're maximizing is your profit, 150 X's and 50 Y's. Because potatoes are X's, corns are Y's. Now, what are your constraints? What are your limiting factors? Can you get an equation from your acre row? Can you get an acre equation? What would that look like?
X plus Y is less than or equal to 7.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. That is absolutely perfect. Beautiful. Can you get an equation or an inequality? It'll have a less than or equal to it. Can you get an inequality from the seed row? What would that look like?
20 and plus, you can go. Plus 60y less than or equal to 3,000.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You guys are picking up on this very quickly. Awesome. Now, then I know there's a couple more lines here I put. Remember, we always include X is greater than 0 and Y is greater than or equal to 0. Those are always part of it. So on your grid, over here to the side, you've got like a piece of graph paper there. Don't set up an axis system in the middle of it. This edge is the y-axis and this edge is the x-axis. You are looking at quadrant 1. So what you have drawn on your paper there is just quadrant 1. Now, when you get a test problem, it's going to look like all of the other homework problems. If you look, or all the other note problems. So there's going to be a box. You fill that in. Perfect. There's going to be some lines here for constraints. That if you actually look at the paper I gave you, that would be question A. Write the constraints for the problem. Here they are. These are the constraints for the problem. B is write the profit equation. Here it is. This is your profit. Profit is 150 X's plus 50 Y's. That is your profit equation. Now we need to graph it. Okay, so before I graph it, I'm going to look at the size of these numbers. It looks like when I graph this one, I'm going to have 70s, right? Y will be 70 and X will be 70. And when I do this one, it looks like that will be a 50, and this will be a 150, okay? And what I'm doing again is I'm thinking about the intercepts. So if I cover up the X's, divide by 60, that means Y would be 50. Here, cover up the Y's, divide by 20, that means I'm going to get 150. So I'm going to go ahead, if this is all right with you, and let every mark on the graph be worth 10. I think I'm going to count by 10s to make this fit on my picture, because these are very big numbers. So, the first one, my purple equation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm going to have to make them smaller than that. You might still have to extend your graph. I don't know how wide it is. I'm going to make my hash mark smaller. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so now I'm ready to graph. Your graph will be better than mine because you have actual graph paper. But I'm going to count over 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's the point 70, 0. Again, kids, pay attention here. cover up one letter at a time and graph the other letter. So if I cover up y, I'm going to graph x as 70. If I cover up x, I'm going to graph y as 70. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm going to connect those, and I'm going to shade underneath. So I just have that tiny little triangle down there so far. Now with my red marker, if I cover up x, y is 50. Because if I cover up x, it says 60y equals 3,000. And if I divide by 60, that gives me 50. And then if I cover up y, it says 20x equals 3,000. So x is 150. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's clear out here. So I'm going to go ahead and connect those two dots with a nice straight line. And that one's also shaded underneath. Now, did the same thing happen that happened before? Do we have an area of overlap? We do. All right, so I'm going to let you get caught up. While you're catching up, part of that is outline the area of overlap and put your big black dots on there. Your area of overlap. You should be looking at this little quadrilateral thing down here. Is that what you're looking at? All right, is everybody caught up to this point? Any question about the graph? Well, part of that says also find the corner points. So what are the corner points? Well, most of them are labeled. Most of them you know. That is 0, 50. That is 0, 0. This is 70, 50. And then, oh darn, we don't know that one, do we? You may have a good idea from your graph, but that's not always the most reliable. So who remembers how we find that point, that missing point that we need? Who remembers how we do that?
Use substitution or elimination.
Exactly. And it would be substituting and eliminating my purple equation and my red equation. Now, we substituted the last time, so I think I'll eliminate this time, but it's completely up to you. You can always substitute, you can always eliminate, you can always use Cramer's rule, makes no difference. All right, so I think I'll just multiply the top one.
Mrs. Fuller,
Yes.
where'd you get the 70-50? Which one's that?
Oh,
I thought it was 70-0.
it is 70-0. Thank you. I don't know why I said 50. I'm crazy. At that point right there is 70-0. You are exactly right. Thank you for pointing that out. So far I have 0, 50, 0, 0, and 70-0. Yes, you are right. Good catch. Okay, now I'm going to use elimination. So I think I'll multiply the top row by -20, I guess. negative 20 times this row. So I'm going to have negative 20x, negative 20y, and negative 1400. If substitution is easier for you, then do it with substitution. I got y to be 40. And if y is 40, x has to be 30. So I got 30, 40, but I'll wait for somebody else to confirm that, since I've already made one mistake with these points.
I got that too.
Super, super, super. So, the answer to the question, which is, how many acres of potatoes should he plant? How many acres of corn should he plant? Is one of these. And to figure out which one it is, we're going to find his profit. I'm going to use a calculator because these are kind of big numbers. So for that first point, all right, it says no X's. He's not going to plant any potatoes, and he's going to plant 50 acres of corn. So that would be $2,500. So that's his profit if that's what he does. Now, obviously, for this point, if he doesn't plant anything, he's not going to profit anything. So that's a 0. This one, 150 times 70. Okay, that's it. That would be $10,500. So if he plants all 70 acres of potatoes, he's going to make $10,500. And then the next one is $6,500. So what are you going to tell this farmer to do? How much should he plant?
You should plant 70 acres of potatoes.
Exactly. So we're going to write that out in a sentence. The farmer should plant 70 acres of potatoes for a profit of $10,500. That sentence can be written in your own words. Please do not think that you have to write it exactly the way I did. All right, we're going to do one more, guys, and then we'll be done for the day. So one more. Any question about that before I erase it and start all over again?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you're finding like the optimal solution, how do you do the math for it?
Well, this is your profit equation. So these are points, X and Y. You just plug them in. So you put in 0 for X and 50 for Y.
Oh shoot, I think I was looking at a different expression.
All right. So here we go. Let's move on to the next one. While I am getting it all set up, why don't you take a stab at filling in the chart? So this is now problem 3, which is the one about tailoring and cutting and sewing different kinds of suits. So while I'm getting all set up, go ahead and see how much you can get filled in of your chart. Okay, I think I'm ready to jump in. Does anybody have any part of the table filled in yet?
I put 2 in for cutting and knitting, or like that. Yeah. Yeah. Next to that, I put 4. Next to that, I put 20. Should I keep going or?
Yes. Let me just double check this. All right. So I want to make sure. Yes, I think you're right, Gabe. I just want to make sure everybody is putting these numbers in the right spot. So it says we're looking at knit suits. Okay, so the first sentence is about knit suits. So it takes 2 cutting, we're in the knit column, 2 cutting and 4 sewing. And then to make a worsted, it takes 4 cutting and 2 sewing. So Gabe, is that what you had?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then you said cutting is a total of 20 and sewing is a total of 16. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Profit on a knit's 34, profit on a worsted's 31, and we don't know that what the maximum is. We're going to fill that in later. How many of each kind should be made to maximize profit? Well, shall we call X knitted and Y worsted? Would that help us write our equations? So this right here gives me an equation. What equation does this give me?
2x plus 4y is less than or equal to 20.
Exactly. And this one gives me 4x plus 2y less than or equal to 16. Now, your goal, you're a businessman, your goal is to profit. So you want to maximize your profit, and your profit is going to be 34x plus 31y. So Kennedy, when I finally get done with all this, this is where I'm going to plug in my points. This is the expression that I maximize. I do not graph this. This is not graphed. This is the plug-in equation that gives me my answer. Don't forget over here to include your x greater than 0 and y greater than 0 as part of your constraints. Anyone have a question so far? You guys did that fast. Any issues? Okie dokie. Then let's graph it. So I think I'll do my first one in green. And I think these are small enough numbers. I think this will fit right on our graph nicely. So I'll cover up X, and that means Y is 5. And then I'll cover up Y, and that means X is 10. Connect them with as straight a line as I can. And shade underneath. Anybody have a question about that piece of the graph? Okay, now I'm going on to my red equation. Same thing, cover up the X, Y is 8. Cover up the Y, X is 4. At this point, hopefully you see your feasible region. Hopefully you see 4 big black dots. And those dots are at 0, 5, 0, 0, 4, 0, and unknown. Mystery point that we have to find. So what do we do to find our mystery point?
Substitution or elimination.
On these two equations. So 2x plus 4y equals 20. And 4x plus 2y equals 16. All right, I'll do this however you want. Who's got an idea?
You can do elimination and multiply the top by -2.
All right, so we got to get a negative in there somewhere. So she says, let's multiply the top by -2. So that would be -4x minus 8y -40. So -6y equals -24. And it looks like y equals 4.
Miss Ford, why'd you distribute -2 again?
We're going to eliminate. She chose to eliminate. So you have to make these cancel. So I got a y value of 4. That's the y now. That's the y value. So if I plug that back in, I have 2x plus 4 times 4 equals 20. I got 2. Anybody else get that point to be 2, 4? Nods, thumbs up. Love those thumbs up. Thanks, Zane. Okay, you're almost done. The answer to the question is going to come from one of these points. The answer is going to be the one of these points that makes this the biggest. Okay? So here we go. If I do the top point, I have 34 times 0 and 31 times 5. So if he does that, if he makes no knitted and 5 worsted, he's going to make $155. 34 times 0, 31 times 5. Well, this point, if he doesn't make anything, his profit's going to be 0. I hope that makes sense to everybody, that that's just going to be 0. 34 times 4, this one's going to be 136, because he's making 4 X's and no Y's. And then this one's going to be 34 times 2 plus 31 times 4. Ooh, that's $192. So since this guy's objective is obviously to maximize his profit, what are you going to advise him to do?
Tailoring firm should make 2 knit suits and 4 worsted suits for the maximum profit of 192.
Exactly. The firm should make 2 knit suits and 4 worsted suits for a profit of $192. Beautifully, beautifully done. Now, I know it's still overwhelming, and I know some of you are still kind of lost, but isn't it getting easier? Wasn't that last one easier than the first one? and we're gonna do them all exactly the same way, and we're gonna set them all up exactly the same way. So after we do this for another day, you'll start feeling more comfortable with it. Might even take us 2 days, I'm not sure. Okay? All right, so we have time to do one review problem for the quiz. So think about what we practiced yesterday, and what would you like to practice one more time? What kind of problem?
I have one. Well, I have a question.
Okay.
So when you do like multiplying them and you're like finding like the A times C,
Uh-huh.
and they're like different though, like the, what are they called? Columns and rows. Like one's 2 times 2 and the other's 2 times 3. Yeah.
Well, you have to be careful, because if we did A times B, we couldn't do that. That would not be possible, because A is a 2 by 3, 2 rows, 3 columns, and B is a 2 by 2. And the rule for multiplication is that these have to match, right? So if the question were, take A times B, the answer would be you can't do it. However, if the question were B times A, then we can do it, because the dimensions haven't changed. We still have a 2 by 2 and a 2 by 3, but now the way we have them set up, these match. So AB isn't doable, but BA is. And the answer, the middle ones match. The answer is the outside one. So the answer is going to be another 2 by 3. So it's going to have 2 rows and 3 columns. To find those numbers in there, we have to do it organized, one at a time. So to find that first number in there, right here, we're going to take the first row times the first column. It's always rows, columns, because this number is in the first row, first column. So I'll write down my row numbers, 3, -1. And then right next to them, I write my column numbers, 1, -1. And then I multiply each pair and add them up. So that's a 3, that's a 1, so this number is a 4. Remember doing that, Clara?
Yeah, I know how to do that. I just don't know how to finish it, like the last row. Like, what numbers do you use? Because, you know.
Well, here, for this spot, we use the first row and the first column. Here we'll use the first row, second column, first row, third column, second row, first column. So whatever number you're looking at, that's the row and the column you use. So if I want this guy right here, he's in the second row, second column. So I will multiply the numbers in the second row, 5, 4, times the numbers in the second column, 2, 5. So that's 10 and 20, so this number would be a 30. Whatever position it is, the number you're looking for, that's the row in the column that you use.
So would you do something different for like the 3 one or like third row?
There is no third row. There is no third row.
Third column?
No.
Which one do you use for that?
Well, if I'm over here, I need the third column, because these numbers are in the third column. So if I want this number right here, that's in the second row, third column. So I use my second row, which is 5, 4, and my third column, which is 3, 4, So 15 plus 16, so that number is going to be a 31. All right. So we got to go. Have a great Easter, and I will see you guys sometime. I don't know when, but we're going to have a quiz when I do. See ya.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye.
Miss Ford?
Yep.